and gentlemen, welcome on into Fantasy Daily. It is Tuesday morning, August 23rd. Thank you so much for waking up with me. I, as always, am your host, Nathan Passwell, joining you here on Fantasy Daily, the full show on YouTube. Or maybe you're joining me on TikTok for tomorrow's episode tonight. And if you are, you can check me out there at Fantasy Daily Football. Or check me out on Twitter at @NPaswell to hear me yell about the games on Sunday on game day, to get all my live thoughts and up-to-date, up-to-the-minute thoughts. So we are rolling through the Outlook series, and today we are doing NFC South. So the NFC North show dropped last night at 8 o'clock. So if you guys haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. That's a pretty good one to go through. But we are talking about the NFC South today to really get you up and ready for your draft come this weekend, come next weekend, whatever weekend it may be. But we are coming into really the draft season where it gets really heavy. A lot of different things are changing. You're getting really all the training camp reports. We got a lot of big news today. So a lot of stuff that you got to be prepared for. You got to stay like water. You got to make sure that you're getting up on all this information. And that's why you're here tuning in with Fantasy Daily. So we got some quick points today to talk about. So yesterday on the NFC North show that I just mentioned, we obviously talked about the Green Bay Packers. Now in that show, I talked a lot about how A.J. Dillon is really nipping at the heels of Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones is owed $16.5 million next year at the beginning of the season. So due to the amount of money that he's really owed, the amount of money that they just gave Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Dillon is really severely nipping at the heels, kind of like the way Derrick Henry was with DeMarco Murray, where he's the running back too, but he can handle a running back one workload. Well, to that point, like I said, where I think you're going to see A.J. Dillon a lot sooner than you expect this year, I do believe that you're going to see Aaron Jones kind of teeter off because of the way that A.J. Dillon runs the ball. They announced today, Matt LaFleur, coach for the Green Bay Packers, announced today that A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are basically a 1A, 1A. Not even 1A, 1B, it's 1A, 1A. He is going to use a hot hand approach, and if that is the case for a hot hand approach with the Green Bay Packers, I'm going A.J. Dillon. I have to at least give that thesis that I do believe that A.J. Dillon has the chance to be the better running back on the team. That's nothing against Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones, but I do believe his best days as a running back with the Packers, that is gone. So if A.J. Dillon really gets in there this year and they set him off from the start strong, they might be looking to trade Aaron Jones before the deadline to get the full reimbursement for what they agreed to on his contract. So a lot of implications there that we'll talk about more when the trade deadline comes. We obviously are going to do some fun shows on there for how trades can, go throughout the season when it comes to the actual NFL league, not really so much fantasy. So a lot of implications there with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. A lot of stuff that you got to keep tuned with, and that's why you stay tuned to Fantasy Daily to make sure you're drafting the correct players at the correct spots. And for some more news, there was a player today that was announced a starter. And that is a great segue for us to get right into the Carolina Panthers that we are breaking down. And Baker Mayfield was named the starting quarterback today for the Panthers. So some of this is, okay, obviously this is water being wet. When I got the notification this morning and they said Baker Mayfield's the starter, yeah, obviously. We knew that was going to happen. Everybody knew there's no way in chance that Sam Darnold's going to beat out Baker Mayfield. He's going to be the starter. But now we get the actual confirmation he is going to be the starter. So now that we get the confirmation, we can start to look at the, fantasy football implications based off Baker Mayfield being the starting quarterback. So with Baker Mayfield coming in, now let's run through, just in case you've been living under a rock for a while, you don't know who the team structure is. Since offseason on these shows, we like to cover that. So Baker Mayfield's the quarterback. You still got Christian McCaffrey and Chuba Hubbard at running back. You got DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrence Marshall still hanging out there, and the tight end is Tommy Tremble. So Baker's named the starter. Not much direct fantasy value for me personally when it comes to Baker Mayfield being the direct starter right now. So as far as fantasy goes, I'm excited for Baker Mayfield to be the starter because I think it's better for the team. But as far as Baker Mayfield standalone and value in fantasy, I don't believe it's there. And that is really based on just the Carolina Panthers organization themselves. They really favor the run on this team. They really favor having a running back who can catch the ball in Christian McCaffrey. They want Chuba Hubbard to be that guy if Christian McCaffrey cannot be available. So for me, Baker Mayfield's really out of the question when it comes to quarterback. Now, going into running back, CMC. We talked a lot him. He was the first person that we talked about on the Draft or Pass show. Every time he gets brought up, I'm basically saying the same thing, and I'm getting dragged a lot for it in my different opinions, but you got to be like water. You got to be bold when it comes to the draft season. And when I'm making my claims, I'm staking my claims at the beginning of the year, and this is one that I feel I'm not going to feel bad about later on in the year. And even if I am wrong about it, I'm not taking that chance. But CMC, with his injury concerns that are going to linger no matter what, the amount of injuries that CMC has piled up, much like Saquon Barkley, it's different injuries that continue to add up for him. So for injury-prone labels, I really feel like CMC deserves that label just as much as George Kittle does. So for CMC's injury concern, I am not taking him in the first round. I am taking him, if he were to be on my team, I would have drafted him in the 4th round. And I'm not getting CMC in the 4th round, so therefore I'm not drafting CMC, and I'm completely fine with that. I would much rather take Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson at the 5th or 6th pick when CMC falls, because I'm not taking that chance of not having guaranteed consistency. When I'm drafting a running back with my first, second, top 5 pick, you have to have team structure. You have to have team consistency. And if you don't with CMC, you're constantly chasing something later on in either the draft or later on in the season. And if you find yourself week 7 chasing for a running back 1, you're going to put yourself really far behind for the teams that are already in the playoffs, really looking for playoffs. So CMC personally, he can do a ton of damage. And people always say, look at the upside, look at the upside. I see the upside. But I also see the massive downtick and the massive roster clog that CMC has been. And if anybody's been a CMC manager, they know just as well as anybody, CMC can be a massive roster clog because you're not dropping CMC. You're not trading him below value, so you're stuck with him. So me personally, that high up, there's no chance that I'm taking CMC. But his backup, Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard is going in almost the 16th round in 12 person drafts right now, 12 player drafts, which is wildly low for me for somebody who should be considered a handcuff. Alexander Madison is going above Chuba Hubbard, and I do believe that Chuba Hubbard has a better chance to get on the field than Alexander Madison does. Alexander Madison is a straight up handcuff. If something happens to Dalvin Cook, or if there's some times where he needs to sit out, that's when Madison comes in. Chuba Hubbard is going to have games where he gets work because they want CMC to take a little bit of a breather. So I do believe that Chuba Hubbard's going to be involved at some point. You're not going to see, he's going to be the handcuff. He's not going to be on your team every single week as a starter unless CMC is not there. But I do believe when we're talking about handcuffs, you're talking about 12-man deep leagues, you're later on in the drafts and you're looking for somebody who could be a handcuff that could return running back 1 value, it's Chuba Hubbard. So I'm excited for his draft price. CMC I'm not touching. Moving on to the wide receivers, we got DJ Moore. So thank heavens Baker is the starter, because this is the player I really was worried about depending on who the quarterback was going to be over there. So before Baker got traded, I wanted to be a big fan of DJ Moore. I was looking at everything in the offseason, and I just can't trust DJ Moore without a quarterback that I trust in because of the team structure, because of the way they play. I need somebody who at quarterback is at least somewhat conscious. They're not absolutely inept at quarterback, and they can return DJ Moore consistent value. So DJ Moore had value last season, but it wasn't consistent value where you were plugging him into your lineup every single week and flying away with it. So I do believe Baker brings that consistency for DJ Moore. I believe that DJ Moore with Baker Mayfield is going to have a large amount of targets. And if he does, he's going to be above the 1,000-yard mark. If he gets above the 1,000-yard mark and you give him 5 or 6 touchdowns, he's automatically in the wide receiver 2 category for you. With that consistency, he's already above Brandon Cooks if you give him that. And I don't think that's outside the realm of possibilities. I don't think 1,200 yards is outside of the realm of possibilities for DJ Moore. So with that being said, he's going very, very late rounds right now. And you're going to be able to get him in like the 8th or 7th round, 9th round maybe, even depending on your home leagues and the size of those. You're going to be able to get that player like DJ Moore because Baker was just named the starter. So ADP, if you're doing the draft on your phone, you're not doing a live draft, his ADP is going to be severely far down. It's going to be extremely far down, and he should be going in the 6th round now that Baker's there, but he's not. So you're going to be able to scoop up a wide receiver later on in the draft that you're going to feel really good about. So I'm very excited with DJ more. Also, Terrence Marshall is there, and I've been a big fan of Terrence Marshall as far as a talent. The only difference is here now that, I don't know if Baker is going to sustain that. You got Robbie Anderson. I'm not really looking at him at all. I'm looking at Terrence Marshall because I do believe he's the second most talented wide receiver on the team. Would love to see him get a lot of opportunity, but it really depends on what Baker does with this offense, and I do believe that Baker's going to pepper DJ Moore with targets, and you're going to see a lot of Christian McCaffrey and Chuba Hubbard. So, going to be a run-heavy team, I do believe. Tommy Tremble, you'll hear his name pop up every now and then because Baker likes those red zone targets for tight ends, but he's not going to be a guy that you want to look at outside of. I hope he gets a touchdown when you're in 12-man leagues and you need somebody to fill in that week. That's where Tommy Tremble's going to fill in, but besides that, you're praying for a touchdown, and he's really going to be as touchdown-dependent as they come. Alrighty, moving on to our next team in the NFC South. We have got the Atlanta Falcons, and gross. Can we just move on segments? These are one of those things where I just really can't, I can't advocate for wanting to talk about the Falcons. Why? I don't want to talk about the Falcons, but through succession you have to. So let us get into it, the implications and where the Falcons look today. Matt Ryan has gone to the Indianapolis Colts, so they have Marcus Mariota and their draft pick Desmond Ridder at quarterback. They have wide receiver, their number 1 pick, Drake London. They also have Bryan Edwards over from Las Vegas, and they have Olamide Zaccheaus. Zaccheaus, very slept on, so we'll talk about him soon, but it also depends on team structure. And then they have tight end Kyle Pitts and running back Cordarrelle Patterson. So, Marcus Mariota, he's going to get the start, okay? I do like Marcus Mariota as far as a talent. He's the fun story that I hope does happen. The only problem is this is the Atlanta Falcons, and they are absolutely abysmal. This was not a Matt Ryan issue or anything like that. Matt Ryan going to Indianapolis, I'm super stoked for. If you guys haven't seen that show, I think it's the AFC South show. Check that one out because I'm over the moon about Matt Ryan. Love where he went. TikTok people, I see you dropping a bunch of questions. I love the questions. Give me till the end of this show, and I promise I'll wrap with you guys. But thoughts on A.J. Dillon? Check out the NFC North show from yesterday. We were talking about how much I love A.J. Dillon with him being the 1A, 1B. I do believe Dillon has a chance to take over the role. So answer that question real quick. But if you're on TikTok, you got questions, wait till the end. I promise you guys I will hang out and answer those afterwards. But back to Marcus Mariota. He's going to get the start. I do believe that you're going to see some Desmond Ridder. So I do believe that this is going to be a team that halfway through the season, you're seeing a quarterback battle, maybe even in-game. When you see those, notifications pop up on your phone, Mariota just got benched, now Ridder's in. And then the next week, they're like, well, we don't know who to name the starter. And then they go back to Mariota, and then Ridder's in. And then they're like, well, we're going to roll with Ridder this week. It's going to be one of those teams where you're going to want to pull your hair out, so don't touch the quarterbacks. Avoid. If Desmond Ridder has appeal, I believe it's next year when Mariota's gone, and that's because he can rush the ball. But besides that, I want no part in the quarterbacks in Atlanta whatsoever. The wide receivers, Drake London, easily the most talented, most NFL-ready wide receiver to come out of the draft, but he landed in Atlanta. He falls to basically what I said on draft night when he got drafted. He falls to the most abysmal spot besides the Jets that he could have went to. I really did not want to see him go to the Jets. I did not want to see him go to Atlanta, and he goes to Atlanta. So, me personally, I have to pass on Drake London. The talent there is so amazing, but the consistency, like we always talk about on this show, he is so far outside the realm of being able to return weekly value that I'm not even looking him close to his 8th round draft price. So we were just talking about DJ Moore. DJ Moore, I have light years ahead of Drake London in my rankings. So for me, it's really hard to just buy into the talent here because of the team structure. I do believe he's going to burn you. He's going to hurt your feelings. Bryan Edwards, he comes over, not really looking at him. Olamide Zaccheaus, same thing as Drake London. I love the talent of Olamide Zaccheaus. I do believe that he's super slept on. Now that Russell Gage is taking a trip over to Tampa Bay, Olamide gets his chance to be the wide receiver too. I do believe he has the talent to do it. He just doesn't have the team to do it. He doesn't have the coaching staff to do it. They're the next, Jets, Browns kind of organization where they can't get out of their own way. So as much as I like Atlanta, I love Atlanta Falcons fans. You all are good people. It sucks. It sucks because you guys have been waiting so long, and it seems like the second quarter of Super Bowl 51 was the peak, and it's been downhill ever since then. And it's unfortunate because they had a lot of stuff there. They just can't get out of their own way. So moving on to tight end Kyle Pitts. We talked about him a lot. I do believe that the rule of necessity for Kyle Pitts might be a factor for him, and it could give him 1,000 yards. So with Drake London on the outside, Olamide Zaccheaus on the outsides, you might have Kyle Pitts as a blanket, and he is a big guy who can catch the ball for 5 yards and then do a lot with it after. He silently had 1,000 yards last season with the 1 touchdown. He's going to have more than 1 touchdown this year. I do believe that he's going to be more of a focal point for the offense for them, and I think that Kyle Pitts, he's going way overdrafted. I would not be taking him before I take somebody like TJ Hawkinson or Dalton Schultz. I would take him a little bit later. So if you're later on in drafts and tight ends are basically gone, you're set up at running back and wide receiver, you're feeling good, then I would maybe look at Kyle Pitts. But besides that, I'm really, really skeptical on what he can return. A lot of us are saying, and even me, I can see the uptick on him, but am I willing to buy the uptick in him? Am I willing to take on that challenge in my team structure where I'm going to be hoping that he scores a touchdown that week? Because if I'm chasing touchdowns, then my running backs and wide receivers need to do a lot to make sure that I win week over week over week. So it's about team structure, but it's also about playing your opponent and making sure you win that week. So if your wide receivers and running backs are working overtime because you have a tight end like Kyle Pitts, that in the long run could hurt you. So me personally, I'm really not looking at Kyle Pitts unless I've kind of skipped out on tight end and I'm having a bad draft and I really need to go down there. But we don't have bad drafts because we tune into Fantasy Daily. We hang out here every single day, 6 days a week. So everybody, moving on to Cordarrelle Patterson, something you might want to hear, because Cordarrelle Patterson, I've been a big fan of him always. He never really got his due in certain teams. Last year he got his due and it was exciting, but I do believe the rule of necessity for Cordarrelle is going to be right there. He's going to have to run the ball a lot. He's going to have to catch the ball. He's going to be a big safety valve, even more than Kyle Pitts is. So I think that Cordarrelle, with his receptions alone, with his rushing ability alone, he's going to be a great pick. Do not draft him where a lot of people are drafting. I'm seeing people reach up for him in like the 6th, thinking that ADP has been adjusted for last season. Don't do that. Do not reach up for Cordarrelle Patterson. Draft him where he is appropriately. Draft him as a flex player. Draft him as a bench player. So I do believe that he's going to have some value, but do not draft him as somebody that you're going to put into your flex every single week, hoping that you're going to get what you got last year. Still going to be a different team. So be very cautious on how you're approaching your draft with Cordarrelle Patterson. All right, I'm steamrolling here, so I need a little sip time. All right, moving on to the Saints. God, this show is gross. Oh, man, I can't stand it. Falcons followed by the Saints. Why you got to do this to me, NFC North? It's so funny, too, because thinking about it, if you go back like 4 or 5 years ago, NFC was really the powerhouse where like the Patriots were going to the Super Bowl every single year, and it's because you were like, yeah, well, they don't really have anybody that they're playing against. They're playing against Big Ben every single year. They're playing against Peyton Manning every single year. So AFC was kind of just like, yeah, or it's going to be one of these two. And now NFC is basically the opposite, and AFC is the powerhouse. So it's funny to see really kind of the dynamic switch. So NFC South, we're continuing with the Saints. You got quarterback Jameis Winston. Your wide receivers are Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry with the newly acquired Chris Olave, who I'm a huge fan of. Running back Alvin Kamara with Mark Ingram hanging out behind him, bringing back the old duo. So if you guys have been playing fantasy football for a few years, you remember Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. They were like the original, Javonte Williams, Melvin Gordon kind of style, where like Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, they were a big thing. Is that like, Mark Ingram was running the ball a lot. You didn't even know if you could trust Alvin Kamara. Then Alvin Kamara steamrolled right over him. So kind of funny seeing Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram reunited again. You got tight ends Taysom Hill and Adam Troutman. We will talk about that as well. So let's talk about Jameis Winston being the starter. Now, Jameis will be the starter, and I assume it is indefinitely. Regardless of if he is bad at games, if he has crazy interception games, I do believe they're just going to keep rolling with him. They're really going to, kind of keel haul themselves and just keep rolling with this however it turns out. And as much as I want to be a fan of Jameis Winston on the Saints, it's tough for me to buy into him at all. So he's going to have games where he, mucks it up for himself. He's probably going to have fantasy games where he has 25, 30 points that are outlier games, but I'm not willing to buy into that. So he might be a streamer that we look at during, bad games where we do starts of the week or streamers of the week during the season. He'll be a name that we fit in there quite a bit. But as far as, year long and drafting him, no way. Not looking at Jameis at all. However, this wide receiver room is really, really good. And I think it is one of those wide receiver rooms that we're not talking enough about because now let's start with Michael Thomas. Okay, let's break down the wide receivers. I don't expect Michael Thomas to return to form anywhere of what he used to be. I don't even expect him to return to 60% of what he used to be. But 50% of what Michael Thomas used to be is still a pretty dominant wide receiver. So with that, with Jarvis Landry reports, apparently Jarvis Landry has been killing it since OTAs. They're absolutely enamored with the way that he's playing on the team. Chris Olave is one of my favorite players. He is a crisp route runner. The way that he plays, he got the touchdown in the preseason game. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I love the way that Olave plays. He can play at the goal line. He can play out wide. He can play inside. He can do just about everything. So I think the way that Olave kind of affects this offense makes this one of the best wide receivers in the wide receiver rooms in the league. And even though they don't have a quarterback to reflect that right now, this could kind of surprise us on some weeks where Jameis has 4 touchdowns because these guys can do a lot with what they have after the catch. So I'm really digging the Chris Olave pick here. Michael Thomas is going super high drafted. I'm not a big fan. If you guys are a Michael Thomas truther out there and you love him, go ahead and take the shot on him. I'm not going to take that shot. I'd much rather have somebody else in that area because I'm pretty sure he's going around Adam Thielen and those guys. So I take Adam Thielen, even DJ Moore way before him. Chris Olave, he's going late in drafts, so I'm a big fan of him in drafts. I think he's in like the 11th round right now, which is a great draft price for somebody like Chris Olave who can return, some sort of value, maybe even a Brandon Cooks consistency every single week. So big fan of him. Jarvis Landry, he's probably the best wide receiver, wide receiver 3 in the league right now, outside of like the Tyler Boyd T. Higgins connection. But Jarvis Landry, for what he does for a locker room, for what he can do for an offense, for the way that he can kind of be reliable, he's almost like the Julian Edelman in New England, where he's, you got your quarterback, but then you got your wide receiver captain as well, who's almost acting as the second coach. So love Jarvis Landry on this team. Love his potential. I don't think that he's going to slot into anywhere above wide receiver 2 except for special weeks. But if you have Jarvis Landry on your bench and in your flex spot, I think you could do a lot worse, and I'd be excited to have it. Moving on to the running backs, we got Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram, like I said. So Mark Ingram we talked a lot about during the offseason, and that's why I slipped him onto this show, because a lot of people were grabbing him thinking, hey, maybe if Alvin Kamara's suspension happens, I got a free running back for the first few years or something like that. Not going to happen. Alvin Kamara's suspension, not going to happen this year. He's probably going to play through the entire year with no discipline at all. So Alvin Kamara is going kind of in the 3rd round now. You can bump him back up to the 2nd round, because for this team, they're going to use Alvin Kamara a lot. And AK-41 is still what he was. He's still going to be a dynamic player. He's still going to be a great player. And with the team that they've constructed, the offense that they constructed, Alvin Kamara can return to his running back 1 value pretty easily. So love where Alvin Kamara is going in drafts. Love the fact that people are kind of sleeping on him. They're a little bit worried about the stigma from the suspension, but there's no suspension coming. It's not going to happen. So keep drafting Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round and be happy that you can probably get 2 wide receivers in the 1st and 2nd, and then get Kamara as your top running back and be pretty solid going into your 4th and 5th rounds, which is where a lot of stuff happens. So we're going to talk about that a lot this week too. We got a lot of draft coverage coming this week for anybody who needs help or tips for that stuff. A lot of different points that we're going to make on that show. Here's something that I want to talk about, and I'm gonna give this one a little dramatic pause because I need more water. Now, Taysom Hill, the man who was paid to be quarterback and that they were basically saying is going to be quarterback once Drew Brees retired. It almost seemed like they were conditioning him to be the successor of Drew Brees. Well, in the offseason, Taysom Hill was moved to tight end, and now he is listed as the tight end 1. So this is the first time I got to use this on the show, but I'm using it right now. I call bullshit. There is no way and chance that Adam Troutman, the tight end who's played tight end his whole life, was beat out by Taysom Hill, who played tight end but mostly quarterback. There's no way that player, Taysom Hill, beat out Adam Troutman in camp or anything where they said, yeah, you know what? You're the guy, clearly the best person for that role. We're going to put you in here. This is clearly money-based. This is, we spent way too much on a quarterback. Now we have to justify putting him on the team and getting him on the field. So they're going to force him into the tight end 1 role. Now, whether or not he has success in the tight end 1 role, I'm willing to say he doesn't, because he had success as a gadget player. If you put a gadget player at tight end and ask him to do what tight ends do up the seam and up the middle and in the inside and between the numbers, it's not going to be great. It's not. You expect Taysom Hill to catch a 2-yard fade in the red zone against the Bucs defense? You out of your mind? There is no way you can ever convince me that Taysom Hill is a better tight end than Adam Troutman, and therefore I have no desire to touch Taysom Hill at all. So the excitement might be there. If you're a Saints fan, maybe they're the ones peddling all the Taysom Hill excitement, but I am completely out on Taysom Hill. I'm still keeping an eye on Adam Trautman, because if he's not talked about at all, and then he works his way into this, explosive offense and has the chance to get, those targets, because as much as Jameis Winston is bad, Adam Trautman and the wide receivers, they don't lose points for Jameis Winston being bad. They only lose opportunities. But if the opportunities are so plentiful because of this style of offense, I do believe that they have that kind of appeal. So Adam Trautman, keep an eye on him, because I do believe that he can return to what you wanted him to be at some point last year. Moving on to the Bucks, because we only got a few minutes left and I want to steamroll through this. So my TikTok viewers, if you guys want to hang out, ask some questions, everybody watching on YouTube, you can catch me filming tomorrow's episode tonight on TikTok. Follow me over there. We're going on into the Bucks, our last team of the night, and we are talking about quarterback Tom Brady, wide receiver Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Russell Gage, running backs Leonard Fournette, Rachaad White, Keyshawn Vaughn, and tight ends Cameron Brate and Kyle Rudolph. So Tom Brady, the big story, where did he go, what happened? I don't care. And I don't think anybody on the Bucks organization would really care. As long as you're going to be back for kickoff, dude, I don't care what you do, because it is Tom Brady. So Tom Brady came back today. He's good to go. He's ready to roll right back in. And for his draft price in fantasy, he is going in probably the late rounds where everybody's gone around 12, 13. Love his draft price. I'd probably wait and get somebody like Derek Carr or Matt Ryan, because they're a lot, more affordable in like the 15, 16 round, and I can keep stacking running backs and wide receivers as I go. But Brady is a great fantasy option, has the chance to throw 40 touchdowns every single year. He's going to throw the ball a ton of times. So great fantasy option, but I would much rather have somebody lower on, and that way I can stack with running backs and wide receivers. But I do love his draft price. Mike Evans, super stud. You keep drafting him in the second round. Godwin, he is going close to the 7th round right now, and I do believe that you can keep drafting Godwin. Just be very skeptical that you have something on the back end to buffer it with. Like you have a good flex player, you have a good wide receiver 3, because Chris Godwin, I do believe, is going to have a slow start. So I do believe he's going to return to where he's supposed to be, what he is, but I do believe he's going to have a slow start. So make sure that you have something to kind of supplant that throughout the beginning of the season, or just kind of out of insurance. Russell Gage, I do believe that Russell Gage could be a sleeper. His talent is there. The rapport is going to be there with Tom Brady. I'm willing to bet on that. The only problem is there's just so many mouths to feed, and the way that he can do a disappearing act, that he's not going to be Mr. Necessity. Mike Evans is going to stay Mr. Necessity no matter what. Brady loves going to Mike Evans. He loves the rapport that he has with him. So I think Russell Gage could really be a player that we saw with like Scotty Miller last year, except for a lot more full time. So I do love Russell Gage and his potential to be a sleeper. The only problem is, like I said, way too many mouths to feed over there. Running backs, we talked about this a lot in the Draft to Pass show, and it's going to be about Leonard Fournette. Now, Leonard Fournette is going currently in the 3rd round. He's actually falling, so I don't know if that's a bunch of Fantasy Daily listeners looking in, seeing them on ADP and going, I watch Fantasy Daily. I'm not drafting Leonard Fournette. But me personally, I am not drafting Leonard Fournette in the 3rd round or as my running back 1. There is no way and chance I can really expect Leonard Fournette to return the same value that he returned last year. And that's basically what you're doing when you're drafting Leonard Fournette. You're saying, okay, he's got Tom Brady, it's the Buccaneers, so he's going to do exactly what he's going to do next as last year. I don't think that's the case. They go and draft Rachaad White. They retain Keyshawn Vaughn, or they got Keyshawn Vaughn. They let Rojo go. These are both pass-catching running backs, something that Leonard Fournette was okay at. He did pretty well, but he did not excel at like Rachaad White or Keyshawn Vaughn did. So I do believe that there is some writing on the wall for the fact that this team wants to have a lot more of a James White role for Tom Brady in comparison to Leonard Fournette being the down-your-throat runner, catch maybe 5 passes a game. They're going to want a running back that can play out wide, who can run those short routes, to catch those little dump offs like I kind of showed you and we were talking about on the show on Friday. But when it comes to Leonard Fournette, drafting him that high, I'm very, very skeptical. I would much rather have a wide receiver in that area, depending on the other wide receivers. We'll talk about that more in the sleeper show, the draft shows. But I really just do not trust Leonard Fournette for that draft price. Keyshawn Vaughn, I do believe, could be a late round sleeper because his pass catching ability is elite. Moving on to the tight ends here. No more Brady tight ends. No more Tom Brady tight ends. So I know you're going to be probably looking at Cameron Brate going, oh, well, he could fill in for that role because he's the number 1 and Tom Brady likes tight ends. I know Tom Brady likes tight ends, but it's not going to be like how he played with Gronk. Cameron Brate, we really haven't talked about him since, 2017? I actually believe that Cameron Brate was one of my first sleepers ever on Fantasy Daily, and that was back when we were on Facebook exclusively. So I do believe that Cameron Brate, Kyle Rudolph, that whole show there is going to be hit or miss. It's going to be up in the air on whoever it's going to be on any given week, and for that reason, I must pass. Now look at that. We are 10 p.m. on the dot for filming for TikTok. Everybody who's watching on YouTube, good morning, because you are just getting your day started because we upload this in the morning. But that is the NFC North show. So you guys, we got NFC East tomorrow, as well as top 10 running backs and quarterbacks coming. If you're on TikTok watching me, make sure you subscribe on YouTube for the full shows. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you go to TikTok so you can watch the show a night early. You can see tomorrow's episode tonight. But that is it for us here for the YouTube show. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Take care.